Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you back again, hopefully with stomach full of Amul ice creams. The morning has given us a lot of interesting perspectives. The focus in the afternoon shifts to social enterprises in particular. We are proud to be a part of the IRMA community, which has been a torchbearer for social enterprises. The idea behind the upcoming discussion is to understand the future prospects of social entrepreneurship from some of the experts who have gathered here. Now, let's look into the proceedings of the second session of the day. We begin with panel discussion moderated by Professor Girish Agrawal, followed by vote of thanks by the Director IRMA. After that, we have a cultural event put together by the students, which begins by 6 p.m. I would like to invite the panel members to begin with the discussions. Could I have a round of applause for Mr. Ananth Kumar, CEO, LifeSpring Hospitals. Mr. Ananth Kumar launched the first LifeSpring Hospital in December 2005, incubated by HLL Lifecare Limited. He is a management graduate from the Institute of Rural Management, Ananth, and has a diploma in healthcare and hospital management from Symbiosis Institute, Pune, and a certification in school entrepreneurship from INSEAD, Singapore. Next, could I have your participation for Ms. Kinnari Desai, Chief Coordinator, Blind Persons Association. Ms. Kinnari Desai has been selected as a fellow for the prestigious Ford Foundation for pursuing Masters in Cultural Foundations in Education in Syracuse University, USA. Next, Mr. Sam White, co-founder, Promethean Power. Mr. White, along with Soren Grama, co-founder the Promethean Power Systems in 2007, received his BA from Union College and recently graduated from GSBI's 2010 class at Santa Clara University. Now I request Mr. P. Pradeep, Senior Partner, Executive Director, Aavishkaar Social Fund, to come over. Mr. Pradeep is the Chief Investment Officer and a board member of Aavishkaar Venture Management Services Private Limited. Based out of Chennai, Pradeep oversees new investments and support to existing portfolio companies for both the microfinance and SME funds. He holds an MBA Finance from Tapmi Manipal and is a Bachelor in Applied Sciences, Engineering from PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore. Now I request Ms. Sumita Ghose, Director, Rangsutra, to please come over the stage. Ms. Sumita Ghose is the founder and managing director of Rangsutra. Sumita has a master's degree in economics from Mumbai University. She was a Fulbright scholar in the United States, where she completed a master's degree in conflict resolution. Sumita has also been a recipient of MacArthur Fellowship for Leadership, and she's among the first batch of CII Aspen India Fellows, and most recently been nominated as Synergis Fellow. Next, could I call on Professor Girish Agrawal, the moderator for the session. Yes, sir. He's professor in strategy management with MBA Finance. He's been involved in several research papers in various national and international journals. To mention this, he is a member of Technical Committee, Diesel Engine Power, Ministry of Power. This is about it. Sir, you could take it ahead from here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm thankful to all the panelists for being here, finding time for all of IRMANs, and finding it on a special day on a very, very short notice. And may I introduce, as she's been already introduced, we've been remembering Mr. Ghose in the morning. He is wife of Mr. Sanjay Ghose, who was mentioned time and again in the morning, so special thanks for making it on a short notice. The discussion in this session is centered towards the lifespan of the enterprises, social enterprises, the life cycle of social enterprises. So briefly, we would like all the panelists here to recount their challenges at various stages. First of all, the challenges in conceptualizing an idea and taking personal risks, we are aware of some of them. And then there are, second stage, you have funding and organizational structural challenges and getting the right kind of people and all that. At the last third stage, we have these marketing or scaling up or distribution challenges. So briefly from each of you, we would like you to go through those steps, and then we can cull out the issues and then take the discussion forward. So may I call upon our first panelist, Mrs. Ghose, to open up the discussion with their experiences in the social sector. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It feels really special being here. And thank you for the invitation. And I missed the morning session, totally my loss. Flight was delayed. When I talk about social enterprises and my experience with them, I think I should begin from the Urmul Trust, actually, which was started in 1986, and which in those days, the word social enterprise was not used. It was more social development, voluntary work. But in many ways, that was one of the pioneering efforts in ensuring good health services, primary health services for local communities in Western Rajasthan. And it had a sustainability model built into it in terms of getting the people who were receiving the services pay for it as well. But of course, that did not work after in a very short time. That model of raising money through milk cooperatives to fund the health of local women and children did not really work, and that's a long story. But it had the inherent challenges of who pays for delivery of services to people who may not be able to afford them at that point of time. Is the larger community, local or national, willing to pay, put in that money, to put in that investment, or is it a non-sustainable model? But Urmul Trust still continues with different ways of raising funds, not necessarily from the farmers themselves, but from the wider community of Indians and global citizens. Here I'll talk mostly about Rangsutra, which an organization, a company of artisans, which I was part of setting up in 2005. And this was, almost 10, 15, 12 years after the country had opened up, and the fruits of economic liberalization were sort of being apparent in the country. And I had the opportunity of being both very closely associated with my rural Indian communities that I had worked with in the past, specifically Western Rajasthan, and also being part of the newer, growing economy, living in Gurgaon and experiencing the benefits of all that liberalization and the new growth had to offer. But at the same time, realized that this was not really trickling down or not really benefiting the larger populations, rural populations in our country. And hence the idea of Rangsutra essentially to create an organization essentially to ensure sustainable livelihoods for rural artisans, based on what I call the twin principles of combining ethics and aesthetics. Both we realized were very important for the organization to be sustainable. Aesthetics, because we were in a business, in a field of work where we were making products made by rural artisans and selling it to the world outside. And unless those products were something that people were dying to buy, it didn't have a life beyond. And ethics, I say, because so far so far the dominant sort of the main models that we had learned. I'm a student of economics. I was not fortunate to study here, but I studied economics. And the main things we learned about firms and business economics was the whole concept of profit maximization, and how do you ensure and how do you grow so that you can increase your profits. But at the same time, when we were setting up Rangsutra, what we realized that the thing that would be core and key to our existence would be ownership. Ownership of the organization. Would it be a company which was owned by few people, or how do we ensure that it is owned by larger numbers of people and true ownership, not just token ownership? So that's how it took some convincing, but 1,000 artisans got together, put in 1,000 rupees each. So there was our first capital of 10 lakhs. I decided that if I was asking people who had very little material resources to put in this money, I had to do the same myself. I had no money. So I borrowed from friends and well-wishers, something I'm still paying back. I'm happy to say I just paid back the last installment, put in another 10 lakhs, and that's how the company was born. I just managed to pay back the last installment from our last dividend that we got last year. So, and then we had others, and we decided very much in the beginning that we would make it a company which was inclusive. And when I say inclusive, I also we felt it was necessary to involve market players also, and not just be limited to seeking funds from the state, or moving away, not taking what I call a welfare approach, but really an empowerment approach, as I call it. And that's when we had the opportunity of attracting Pradeep's company. So Aavishkaar, who also invested in Rangsutra, and we had some good tie-ups in the market with Fab India and others. And if I look at it now, some of the main challenges that we are facing today essentially is that it worked very well. I mean, I don't need to go into details. Later on I can discuss this more if people have specific questions. It worked very well up to a point where, the artisans had a real commitment, in the sense that not only are there, today from 1,000 we've gone up to 1,800 artisans who are shareholders in the company. And, but we also ensure work to larger numbers, to close to 3,000. Not all of them are shareholders. And the challenge is, okay, how do we motivate them to become shareholders? Should we make it compulsory, or should it be voluntary? It has to be voluntary to buy shares. So these are some challenges. And also the main challenge that we face really is in our very being itself, in a sense. The whole, what shall I call it an animal or a tree of social enterprise, which tries to combine both social and economic goals. And therein lies the challenge. Very often when, for us to be viable and competitive and survive in the market, we are faced with this whole aspect of, okay, simple things like, should we accept this order? We are not going to make any profit on it. But at the same time, 100 artisans will benefit from the work that it will ensure. So the aspect of ensuring both, social and economic objectives of our organization, that continues to remain a challenge for us, and in a way, the main challenge. I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. We'll be taking specific questions at the end of all the panel discussion. Is that all right with the audience? Thank you. May I now invite Mr. Ananth Kumar?
As the anchor described my background, I did my PRM, passed out in '97, and after doing my rural management, today running a hospital, it has been a long journey for me. and I guess that was the first challenge. I was picked from the campus by a public sector company called HLL, Hindustan Latex, who are known in India and outside for contraceptives, for stopping babies coming to this world, and from there moving and running a maternity hospital, and where my primary goal is to have more and more babies, it has been a great shift, a change of religion, I would call. And I guess that was the first challenge that I faced when we conceptualized LifeSpring Hospital. The way we realized a need for LifeSpring was that when I was working in the contraceptive marketing, I had an opportunity to visit a lot of these government hospitals, private hospitals, and see their working, because I was marketing a product called intrauterine device, which required the assistance of a doctor. And when I used to visit these government hospitals, public hospitals, what I saw, it was always overcrowded, long waiting hours, and most importantly, no dignity. Women have to wait for hours. You can walk into labor room, So the entire, which was something which I realized is which was not going very well. It didn't immediately strike that something is wrong, but it was something that was, I found that something is not right. At the same time, when I used to visit these private hospitals, although they used to charge a lot, and they still do, but you're not very sure about the quality. It's not that when a patient is paying money for a service, they're really getting the value for that money. Till that point of time, there was no concept. If you ask me, when today I'm very confused about social enterprise, I don't call myself social entrepreneur, I call more as an entrepreneur. Realize that there's something missing. That was the only thing, not beyond that. I thought I'm going to retire in HLL, and never had a thought of starting a maternity hospital. At that point of time, slowly it started dawning on me that there's something missing, is something that we can do about it. And this idea came of setting up a maternity hospital which can provide care at a price which is much more lower than what the private sector is charging, but still remain profitable. Because profit, I realize, is very important for the sustainability of the model. Having worked with donor funding, I realized that donor funding is always very fickle. It doesn't help you in building a sustainable model. Once this idea came of setting up hospital, is my first challenge. We prepared nice PowerPoints, presentations, and business plan, and when we went to people, they said, it's not possible. If you have an idea where you can provide a sustainable, low-cost healthcare model, there would have been 10 people before you who would have done that. Given that you have no experience of running a hospital, so how do we believe you? So that was the first challenge that we faced when we started with this, was that there was nobody who was ready to believe us. There was no experience of running a hospital till that point of time. I'm talking about 2003, 2004. And I had around 6-7 years of experience till that. And people say, looks good on paper, but there's nobody who's going to believe me, right? It took me nearly 2 years to find the first investors, but I was not able to find anybody outside. At the end of the day, I went back to my company where I was working, and I said, why don't you give the money first? Because you know me. And that's what it starts. Oh, they said, okay, let's try it out and set up a first hospital, hospital where we'll test this concept. At that point of time, so I started this first hospital in 2005, December, January 2006. And at that point of time, you had all these low-cost airlines, like Air Deccan and stuff like that. Even my concept, and even today, LifeSpring concept remains the same, that if you're able to spread your cost, given that most of the cost in a hospital is fixed in nature, maybe you are able to reduce the price. So that was the, we tried with one hospital and it did well. We were able to prove most of the assumptions. But it took me nearly 3 years to get this first, the first model from a paper uh, to a hospital to work. And during that point of time, I also did a distance course in hospital management, just to know what I'm talking about. So, that was the first challenge. And then as we started growing, there were many more challenges that came. To fast forward and come to today, if I look today and say, what are my challenges? I know in the morning we have discussed about access to capital to be one of the important challenge. Do you get money? How do you raise money, get money to start a hospital? And when I talk about access to capital, we are talking from both sides. We are talking from our entrepreneur or enterprise trying to access capital. Just to give you an idea, when I go to a bank and ask for money, around to raise a small debt, I end up paying a higher interest than a pure play commercial player. And the reason is that there is no such model that exists today. So the bank looks at this model and says it's a risky model. Or you are compared with another traditional hospital, say Apollo or Fortis, and they say, okay, they are giving a better return, so basically you are not in the same category. So that's one side that we see access to capital. The second is from the users or customers who come to LifeSpring Hospital. Even I see that even for them, there's a big issue around getting money, for the deliveries. To give you an idea, we charge 5,000 rupees for the entire delivery, right? From the time, including medicines, doctors, whatnot, everything together 5,000 rupees. What we realize is almost all our customers pay out of pocket, because they come from that working poor background. They are mechanics, carpenters, masons, auto rickshaw driver. Now, the challenge that they face, a lot of them, it's not that they don't have money, but it's a problem of cash flow. They don't have that money at that point of time. How do we handle that? In fact, I took a proposal to a bank and asked them, can you not work some kind of EMI, where you can, the bank can pay and then the customer can pay over a period of next 1 year. And I gave them an example of refrigerator or television where they can pay for, you want to buy a TV, you can buy, but why not for a birthing? And the banker, laughed at me and said, what is the collateral? I can't keep the baby with me, right? At least I can take the refrigerator. So, so when I talk about access to capital, that's one area that I see. The second challenge that I see is access to skills. When I talk about skills, the challenge or the problem that we are trying to address is much more complicated than maybe Hindustan Unilever or P&G is doing. They've already, I think, figured out what they want to do. So, if that is the case, organizations like LifeSpring requires people who are more brighter, right, than what P&G or Infosys would get. But we don't have the kind of capital or salaries or compensation that we can pay to get that skill. So that's the second area that I see that organizations like LifeSpring, if it has to grow, you also need some of the brightest people, who can work. If today LifeSpring is able to provide services, say at 5,000, maybe tomorrow can be provided 3,000. Definitely there's a way it can be done, but you need somebody who's more brighter than me or who can work with me and think about how it can be done. The third challenge that I see is around, and I'm just talking about the organization, but there are external challenges like regulatory environment and so on and so forth, is partnerships, it is very difficult for an enterprise like LifeSpring, which legally operates like a private sector enterprise, but has a heart of a social enterprise, to build partnerships. Donors do not look at us because they say we can give monies to only to not for profit, but you are a profit guy, we can't give you the money. When I go to banks, they tell me we can't give you money because You're not giving me the type of returns that we want. Now, where do I get that partnership? And it's the same thing is for other things. If I want to build a partnership on insurance, I want to build a partnership on quality system, very difficult to build, find partners who like to work with organizations like LifeSpring. So I think I'll stop there in terms of the challenges that I identified. Maybe there are a lot of other challenges, but we'll give time to others.
Thank you, Ananthji. Mr. Sam White is the co-founder of Promethean Power, and I think he'll let him talk about the kind of company they are, because from one hand, from Sumita, we heard there is a purely developmental organizations to a mixed model of Mr. Ananth Kumar to a third extreme with Mr. Sam. Yeah. So I'll let him talk about it and describe his kind of challenges and the kind of life cycle they are going through. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. It's great to be here. Just to put things into context, let me tell you what our technology is. We are focused on the $13 billion of food that gets spoiled every year because of the unreliable electricity to be able to chill that food. And today we completed the last and final prototype that we're going to scale, which is a rapid milk chiller that for the first time in India's history outside of Gujarat is chilling milk without a diesel generator. So I wanted to start there because the story I'm about to tell you is so painful that you'd be surprised that Professor Girish even invited me here. We started off in 2007 after we won second place at the MIT 100K business plan competition, which really invites executives like me with students and PhDs together to participate in trying to build a business around starting with a business plan. So when we won second place, our business plan was based on a technology that was an engine made out of car parts, and our vision was to electrify India with this technology. So we built the whole business plan around India, and we've never been to India. So after we won, I quit my job. My business partner graduated from MIT, and we were off to India for a month. And we discovered that you can't just electrify a village. Who's going to be able to afford it if it's not an income-generating technology? So we saw some amazing opportunities as we went from village to village, trying to find an application for this technology. And then 2 weeks into that trip, I made a cold call to the managing director of Bangalore Dairy. Someone suggested that we call Bangalore Dairy, so I asked for the managing director naively at 9:30 in the morning, and 2 hours later, he had us come and explain to 14 of his engineers in excruciating detail why it is so painful for them to collect milk from 10,000 villages twice a day in areas that don't have enough electricity to chill this milk without using a diesel generator. So that day changed our lives forever. We never took our eyes off of trying to figure out a way to chill that milk without a diesel generator. So our first focus was solar. We came back to Boston, and within a month and a half, we realized that that first technology was not going to be efficient enough to chill milk. So then we tried so many damn things. I'll list them quickly. So after this engine made out of car parts failed, we were using parabolic mirrors to create heat to generate electricity, kind of like a steam engine. Then we tried thermoelectrics, which are chips that you put electricity in. One side gets cold, one side gets hot. We were going to use the cold side to chill milk. That failed after 6 months. Then we tried, in our ivory tower back in Boston, we thought, the cheapest way to chill milk really is to make ice. And these dairies can just deliver ice to these villages, and we'll take the ice water and we'll use a solar panel and pump the the ice water up a heat exchanger and we'll chill the milk. So we actually tried that. We worked with Goa Dairy, which has plenty of ice in Goa, and we made it work, but who the hell is going to deliver ice to a village to chill milk? And then we got our chance of a lifetime. We met the chairman of India's largest private dairy, Mr. Chandramogan from Hudson. People from the south may know it from Arun ice cream. And we built the first solar milk chiller ever. And we put it in Salem in Tamil Nadu. And it worked to spec, but it was a monstrosity of a thing to chill 500 liters of milk. 2.5 kilowatts of solar. It took up a room about half the size of the stage. And the chairman came in and saw how big it was, and he said, "Guys, this is great, but it's just so big. What shed is going to support all these solar panels?" And we're like, "Why the hell didn't you tell us this before?" So, and he saw how dejected we were, and he said, when I started my ice cream business, I was, literally had one cart, and I made so many mistakes. And he said to us, "Failure breeds success. And I promise you that, and success oftentimes breeds arrogance. And I promise you, you guys aren't arrogant, which means we're not successful either." So after that, we were so dejected. But as we were smoking cigarettes on the streets of Salem, and we don't smoke, one of our guys said, "Well, what if we just focus on this battery that we had to make for solar, because solar can't work without some sort of storage mechanism." So we said, "Yeah, that's an interesting idea. We could just couple this 2,000 liter tank that we use as solar. Basically, we cooled a coolant to -5°C." Am I going on too long? Or tell me if I'm going on too long. Sorry? Tell me if I'm talking too much. No, go ahead. Okay. So we had made a 2,000 liter tank of coolant that we brought to -5°C. That was our storage mechanism to be able to chill milk using solar. And then we said, okay, let's try to improve the efficiency of this monstrosity of a thermal battery and improve the milk heat exchanger, which kind of looks like a Shivaling. As the milk spreads over this cold surface, it goes from 35°C down to 4°C instantly. But we needed solar. But then we thought, well, we have electricity. We have 12 hours, 10 hours of electricity. You never know when it comes, but it does come. So we decided to focus our business purely on relying on the 10 hours of power that you get in a village. And so we consider the unreliable power that you get from the grid here just like solar. It comes, it goes, it's cloudy, it's nighttime. So we built our first system for Hudson, again, 4 months ago. And that thing has been running for 4 months without a diesel generator. And they're very happy with their performance. Since then, we've sold one to Amul, Chittale, Mother Dairy, and we're getting an order for 50 more units from Hudson. So that's pretty much my story. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. I have known Sam for a very short period. In the morning, he was telling me that they've taken some of your seniors for MTS. He was telling me that they want to come back to recruiting. I said, yeah, we can do that. But I didn't know he would start pitching right now.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you have Miss Ghosh there who are into milk procurement and all these things. So there's a one-to-one prospect for business there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just mention my experience with this last project that we did with the students? I want to say that I worked with 4 of the IRMA students in this last project. And after they presented to us last week, my business partner was like, the quality of the work that these 4 IRMA kids did was on par with anything that we've seen from Harvard or MIT. But the difference is the work that the kids do at Harvard and MIT, their motivation is to go into investment banking in New York and make a ton of money, and they'll come to India for 2 weeks just to be able to say that they help society. But you guys are 100% dedicated to rural community. It's just amazing to see. Hats off to you.
Thank you, Sam, for those encouraging words. I now invite Ms. Kinnari Desai from Blind Persons Associations to describe the kind of issues their organizations was conceived on, it is carrying on, and the challenges that it faces in addressing those. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm working with Blind People's Association, and it was founded in 1954 by Jagdish Bhai Patel, who himself was a visually impaired person. We are into disability and development. We are doing empowerment of people with disabilities, as well as we are doing the capacity building of government to implement various acts and general resolutions of people with disabilities. So that is our basic work. We are into various kind of rehabilitation. We promote social inclusion of people with disabilities. We do economic rehabilitation and placement of people with disabilities, as well as we also into education of people with disabilities. We have a blind school, and we have around 13 campuses around Gujarat. So that is what BPA does. Basically, I would like to share a small 3 case studies, and then I'll talk about the challenges and what we are doing actually in the field, because BPA is a pioneer in implementing community-based rehabilitation program for the comprehensive rehabilitation of people with disabilities. And the Gujarat government was the first state government who funded community-based rehabilitation program, like around 130 CBR projects they funded. So that was like, we are pioneer in CBR. I'll share 3 small stories, and then I'll talk about the challenges. I want to talk about Rajesh. Rajesh Sheth, he is a very young and energetic young boy of 29 years old, belongs to a Halwai family of, very well-known Halwai family of Limdi in Surendranagar district. He was diagnosed as a deaf child when he was 3 years old, and then started losing his eyesight, and now he is completely deaf-blind person. And he was like completely in oblivion stage. And one of the visionary, who thought of giving him training of making samosas, because he belongs to Halwai family. So we taught him how to make samosas. And now he's making delicious samosas, same shape, same taste, every day. Not only he is expert in making samosas, but he is making very nice fafda, which is a trademark of Saurashtra. So Now he's completely empowered, he's economically independent and supporting his family. The second story is Khurshida Banu. She's a visually impaired woman. She's also 25 years old. She's based in Alwa village, which is in Kheda district. She was a child with, she had a normal vision, and then she started losing her vision at the age of 5 years, and she became completely blind at the age of 15 years. And now she is running a store, grocery store in her village. And gradually, because of the competition, now she has added one more, store or corner in her store. Now she is also running a Kangan store in the same village. So she is a model story, and she is inspiring not only women with disabilities, but now she is also motivating other women, non-disabled women of the surrounding village. And the third story is of Pankaj Doshi. Pankaj Doshi is a deaf person. His parents and his elder brother, they are also deaf. He only got the opportunity to study up to 10th standard because we don't have a system where he can go beyond the 10th standard. So he studied up to 10th and he was searching jobs, but there was no opportunity for him. And now he is accepted by KFC. You must have heard of the chain of restaurants. And they have given him opportunity, and now he is working as a cook over there. He belongs to a very conservative Jain family where they don't eat even garlic and onion, but he is a cook and making delicious chicken recipes. And now he is working full-time with KFC. So friends, these are the 3 stories. They are from the different places of Gujarat. I would like to say that, the common thread of these 3 stories is acceptance, inclusion, and innovation. This is what BPA does. BPA is promoting acceptance of people with disabilities within the communities. We generally go to the communities, we talk about disability, we create awareness related to disability, and we do the capacity building of the community, that how people with disabilities can become a contributing member of the society. So that is what our goal is. Accepting person with disability with empathy is really a big challenge. Accepting people with disability and treating them equally is also a big challenge. We are informing, and we are telling people with disabilities to come together, have their collective voice, fight together, and that is what our role is. People with disabilities are really very scattered. That is another challenge we face. People with disabilities are invisible in the society. They are, staying in the 4 walls of the houses because it's a stigma in the society that, they cannot become a part of social event. They cannot become a part of cultural and political events. So this is the myth, and that's what we are breaking. We are trying to break that stereotypes in the community. So inclusion of people with disability is a very big challenge. We are telling community that why segregation, why segregated projects, why segregated advocacy? Because we people with disabilities are people first, and they are entitled to the same rights and responsibilities. They have the same fundamental rights, and they need to access the same services and rights. But generally, they don't get the opportunities to access their rights. So that is the big challenge we face in the community. The third thing is innovation. Like there are DesignMed, you all must have heard of DesignMed because of the Satyamev Jayate. They've employed around 250 people with a variety of disabilities, and now they are earning up to 50,000 rupees a month because they are doing animation projects, and they are working on the computers with little adaptation and little training, and they are economically independent, but there are very few such innovators or visionaries to implement such projects and programs. We are looking forward to such people in the community to accept people with disabilities, to include people with disabilities into their programs, and give them the opportunity to perform. We generally promote such inclusion of people with disabilities so that they can perform their best. So this is generally what we are doing in the society. We are generally doing advocacy with government to implement the Person with Disability Act 1995, because we need accessibility, we need inclusion, and we need the complete accessible environment for education, for employment, and for participation. So that is what blind people is doing since 1954. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Desai. Would you like to address the challenges part of your organization?
Yeah, like we say that, people with disabilities are really very scattered. So Blind People's Association always face, because, all the funding organizations located in UK, France, they always say that Gujarat doesn't need any funding. So we don't get generally funding from foreign organization. We have come up with variety of solutions, like we are coming up with self-help group, and we are empowering people with disabilities. But again, the challenge is like, it's like, like you need two hands to clap with. We are empowering people with disabilities to ask their right, but we need to empower the community. Like we are talking about prevention of disabilities. We are talking about inclusion of people with disabilities into mainstream programs, into mainstream advocacy. And these are the issues, like you're not working with machine, you're working with society. You're working, like every day you face the challenge, because it's a attitude which is a big hurdle for people with disabilities. Social stigma, it is very difficult to, like, it's not a miracle kind of thing that you work for 3 years and the social stigma will be removed. So these kind of social myths are really a big challenge for us. And the third thing is bringing people together, forming network. People have always a fear of diluting their own topics and their own agendas. So, networking is a very big challenge, and we are still fighting to, develop an intergroup dialogue between the development organization to include people with disabilities in their own agendas. So these are the issues we are still fighting with.
Thank you. I now invite Mr. Pradeep, Senior Partner of Aavishkaar Social Fund. We had some connections here already. Ms. Ghose describing that they did receive some support from Aavishkaar, so we would like to know their perspective of supporting social enterprises. What are their fears and their hopes or their mandates or expectations from such organizations they fund? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, we are from Hello. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So I come from a venture capital funding background. So so let me take the benefit of some of the examples that all my co-participants have said, and which will help me present the case a little better. So actually, I think it's good if we can do that way. So. So thanks, Sumita. I think we have been fortunate to have been associated with Sumita and with Rangsutra as as your first investor, right? I mean, as we were the first investors into Rangsutra, a company that was promoted by Sumita and has got a lot of artisans as the shareholders. That's an example of an enterprise where we have supported and invested. Ananth, although we have not directly worked with Ananth, but there have been companies like the ones that Ananth has been looking at. A company, for example, which we have been working for the last many years, is a company called Vatsalya Healthcare, which Ananth is familiar with, and we were again the first investors in that company as well. And Vatsalya today is provider of primary care and secondary care healthcare delivery services to tier 3 taluks and rural areas of India, although the business models have changed a little bit from the way they initially thought. So they are more in the taluk level, district level today. But the intention is also to take healthcare where healthcare facilities have not yet gone and professionally delivered to the people there. Let me take the other example that Sam mentioned about dairy, and maybe I would think you are probably a more solar thermal renewable energy company. So let me give you an example of another company in our investment portfolio, to call it. There's a company called Vortex, which is based in Chennai, who make the world's cheapest ATM machines. And it's been proven around the world. They make the lowest cost ATM machines. They make the lowest operational expense ATM machines. And this machine is the only ATM machine in the world that can run on solar power, and it needs only 60 watts. The ATM, the entire operation of the ATM can need only 60 watts as compared to a comparable ATM that we all see today. Out of the 80-odd thousand of ATMs in India today, almost 95% of all of them are in big cities. And you would hardly see 5% of the ATMs in more interior areas. This is a company we believe will make this transition into more interior areas happen, primarily because of their extremely low cost of operation, low cost of installation, and there is no problems and no frills associated with that. It can work exactly as good as any other normal ATM. Let me take the example of what Ms. Kinnari Desai said. We are working with some companies today, although we have not yet on turning this into an opportunity where people who are physically differently enabled, especially people from the eyesight perspective, to use this as an experience of what it means to be living in a certain way, and to see if this can be turned out into an opportunity of employment opportunity for more such people in many other areas where they're existing. So this is just to set the stage, in a sense that the examples that we have been hearing so far is typically the kind of examples that we as a venture capital fund, we have today in our portfolio about 23 plus 7 plus 5, and approximately 35 companies. All companies are in stages and having issues and problems, and highlights, as we have just heard from the promoters themselves, and I am no better person to explain these issues. And these are issues that you will see refraining again and again, whoever may be the promoter you speak to, whoever may be the company you talk to. So Aavishkaar, which is the name of my fund, essentially is in the business of taking entrepreneurship to tier 3, tier 2 rural areas, to make entrepreneurship as a vehicle to provide basic services available in these places which are thus so far not available in such places, be it healthcare, be it education, be it handicrafts, be it renewable energy, be it agro-processing. That's our mandate. Our mandate is to take this, because there's a huge aspiration to make services and products that are otherwise available, accessible, affordable to people in bigger cities and bigger towns, make it available to them in an entrepreneurial driven fashion. And that's where the context of entrepreneurship is important to us, because we believe that's the vehicle that will take this whole process forward. Entrepreneurship means that you have to be sustainable and scalable. And given the opportunity for scale in a country like ours, the opportunity is so huge. I mean, if you have a brilliant idea, and all this is on the bedrock of innovation, driven by idea, driven by innovation, driven by appropriate business models, and make this an extremely scalable model is where we are coming from. And I mean, to put it in the context of the challenges that we are facing, I think let me put it in two ways. The challenges, we are about 11 years old now. So we're about 11 years old. So in the early days, people were to think about us less as a venture fund, but more like an adventure fund. I mean, we used just to go around and just whoever we see on the road, give them some money and and let's see what will happen. So we were the most risk-friendly kind of people. So people used to think that we are like some jolly good people going on the road and just giving money to whoever we thought we will. So that was our, and it took us, and Vineet is my partner, Vineet Rai, who's my partner, he would tell you that it took us such a long time to convince investors to give us some money for us, which we can then go ahead and use it and go ahead and invest elsewhere. And even today, that issue remains. How do you balance the perception of enterprise growth vis-a-vis what the people who have the money think and what we believe on the ground think? So that's the big bridge that we'll have to always cross. But even more importantly, because for us, the enterprises, the promoters, and the companies we support are really the people for whom we stand for. I mean, they really are the ones on behalf of whom we need to speak. And for them, it's always been confusing. You talk to any promoter, the first question asks, what is this? You talk about entrepreneurship, you say you will only have to be rural, you only have to be social. How does it meet? This is a complicated question in their minds. And for us to be able to come and talk to us and say, we want you to grow, we want you to scale, and we want you to impact more and more people by virtue of your scale. And so now, over the last few years, there's a new word that's been coined. It's called impact investments. And it's something that I guess we were also probably helped or fashioned in a manner to help coin this phrase called impact investments. And what is the definition of impact investment as compared to mainstream investment, as compared to what is called social investment? Because we believe there is really no such thing as social investment. We believe every investment is investment for the sake of growth and scale, and the kind of work that an entity or a company or any organization is doing is in terms of what it is making a difference to the people with whom it is engaging with. It could be the farmers, the society, or the people as stakeholders, like in the case of Rangsutra, or it could be people who are using renewable power and therefore able to provide these accessibilities in places which they never had access to so far. That's been our challenge, to be able to clearly enunciate what exactly we mean, to ensure that promoters understand what we are talking about, and help them grow and scale to the next level, help them raise more amount of capital, help them move to new areas, move to new districts, move new states, etc. Because the opportunity is so large. India is such a large country, and every area has got huge problems. And the farmer who is sitting here in Gujarat is more likely to have exactly the same problem that another farmer in Kerala might be having. The same kind of situation, the same kind of market dynamics will work. Maybe here it is somebody who is doing castor oil, there it could be somebody who is doing coconut. But apart from the kind of products, the fundamental issues remain very much the same. So the innovation has to be primarily, we believe, in the business models more than the product itself or more than the technology itself. to be able to make a model that makes this whole thing very meaningful, makes it very purposeful, where you are able to make meaning to both the customer at the final end and to you as a company in the intermediary and to all your stakeholders, which include investors like us, new investors who will come in tomorrow. And I think making this entire ecosystem work is really going to be setting the agenda for us going ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open the discussion to questions from the house, I have a question here from one of the audience, and that is, what is the the work area of Rangsutra and LifeSpring hospitals?
Work area?
Yeah, where do they work, really? Locations and coverage, etc.
Well, Rangsutra started off primarily in western Rajasthan, in the desert districts. But now we also work in eastern UP, in some parts of West Bengal, so gradually more eastwards as well.
LifeSpring is focused on urban working poor. Currently we operate 12 maternity hospitals in Hyderabad, and we have plans of growing to some other cities, but today we are in Hyderabad city.
Thank you. Now it's open to the house. Any questions, please?
How do you decide what parts of India you work in?
Basically, the demand, request from artisans, request from artisans groups who come to us and ask us for help, primarily in two areas, which is design and marketing. But our experience has shown that much more than design and marketing, it's production which remains a challenge because it's very widespread, dispersed. So that's one of the ways we grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Pradeep, and that is, in the last 6 months I have seen many inquiries from investors wanting to invest in social ventures. I mean, that is as against what happened in 2000 when there were no investors to be seen around for any kind of venture. So what has changed?
So Professor, I think what has changed is two things. I think one, and both are changes for the positive. And number one is the increasing realization among investors all over the world that clearly there is so much happening and there is a huge opportunity in India. And the real growth story is going to happen not in the big cities but more in the interiors. I think this is increasingly dawning among most people. Primarily because probably the tapering off in the huge kind of opportunities in the larger places, combined with the fact that there is definitely a realization that given the kind of segments that has been so far excluded from this whole perspective, there is a huge opportunity in that. And I think this has been the significant realization. But what is more important, I think, is the factors that has contributed to it and behind. Because for all investors who are coming and looking at this, is most importantly, they want to know, can we exit from this? Sumita, sorry. I think this is typically this is the chakra view question that we always ask before we like in the story in the Mahabharata, before we even get into the thing, can we get out? It's always the first question that comes to any investor's mind, ironically, but promoters don't always take it in exactly in the right manner. But the question always is, how do we exit before giving the money? And I think what has really changed in the last few years, and I think I would be happy to say that our fund has in some manner contributed to that. We have actually got good exits. Which I think has completely changed the perspective of any investor who thinks this is something somewhere out there so far away. Is no longer the perception that any investor carries, that exits are possible. And we have exited from companies where our initial investment was as small as 8 lakh rupees. And the company is today about 7.5 crore. I think they're doing about 10 crore kind of turnover. And we have exited from that company and with significant good returns. And the company today continues to do exactly the same thing. And that is a complete blinkers open kind of a situation, that if it's possible to exit from a company like this, which was thus far contrarian to the popular perception of what is meant by investment and exits, I think that has significantly changed. I think the growing realization that this is possible in these places has changed, which I think is good. And I think we always believe that exits are primarily a factor of the growth and scale opportunity. And these enterprises, the way they are, will definitely grow and scale. And what has happened now is only a natural progression of what was anyway supposed to happen. So I think that has changed as well.
Just to follow up on that point, we did not get into this business to do social good. We saw an opportunity Absolutely. Where, if you compare the US farming to India farming, in the US, 80% of food gets processed. In India, just 6% gets processed. You cannot find that kind of untapped market anywhere in Europe or the US. That's why we're here. That's why we have come to live in India permanently, to reap the benefits. It was only when social impact investors approached us when we realized, maybe we're doing some good in society as well.
One of the questions that the morning panel grappled with was when all these social enterprises have to compete in the marketplace with all the players, all sorts of players. Some of them are multinationals, and we heard from eminent professor that there's no running away from competition. And there's the only way to survive is to innovate inside.
Absolutely.
And so I think yours is, Rajasthan, I find it's typically interesting in that respect. Because milk is most often going to the private traders rather than the cooperatives or collectives. So how do you see that?
Well, actually, I won't talk about milk because Rangsutra is basically working with handicrafts. Yes, competition is there, and competition in a way keeps us on our toes, has been good. Moving more towards efficiency, because we are, unlike what you said, we have come from more of a social good background and objective, and have to compete in a very competitive market where we are competing with units, manufacturing units which are based in cities with electricity round the clock, which have, which can monitor, supervise their workers very easily, and ours are all home-based. All the 3,000 artisans are all based in their homes. There are no units, no factories. So, but the competition has, in a way, what has helped us is the fact that all the artisans are shareholders in the company. So they are not only wage earners. They are not only wage labor. So they have started and have shown an interest in how, I'm very interested in how the company is doing, whether it's making profit, loss, getting dividends. They're also representative on our board. So I think that's where having shareholders as artisans, although we are now a public limited company and managing all those, thousands of accounts are quite a heavy task in itself. There's a lot of legal compliances that have to be followed, but all that is worth it, because at the end of the day, that ownership, that holding, there is this, I once went to a village where one of our artisans, she had the share certificate framed on her wall. So I thought she had misunderstood, and she thought this was a training certificate. So I said, this is not a training. I mean, this is, what this is. She says, I know what it is. So I said, why have you framed it up? So she says, this is the only asset I own. The land does not belong, is not in her name. Because of that share certificate, finally she opened a bank account to deposit her dividend. So she was very happy that the price of that, she had paid 100 rupees per share and it had gone up to close to 800 rupees. So she was very happy with that, and she's definitely not going to sell it anytime in the near future. So I think that competition, in a way, when you said the competition keeps us on our toes, keeps us relevant, keeps us on the edge, and the social bit gives us another edge to it. So all in all, I think we're walking a...
Can I add, Professor?
Please.
Just to add to this point, I think also going back to what Ananth had said a little earlier, what this really means is such enterprises needs the best brains as well. I mean, really needs a kind of people, because what you need to do to stay ahead of what everybody else is doing is how you keep on thinking on your feet, essentially, when you, especially in the early days, and what it means, how innovative can you be to be, how flexible can you change your processes, systems, how can you be innovative on your business model. And for doing all this, you need excellent team, the people who support you. And I think therefore the point that Ananth had made also becomes extremely critical, that you actually need more intelligent people to make the early stage. Any early stage business is always risk filled, always has got challenges. Everybody will talk about you're going against status quo.
Yeah.
And when for you to succeed in any early stage business means a lot of brain power, a lot of heart power, and a lot of feet power as well. So that's how it can work. So
you're also competing against, like we're competing against De Laval, Blue Star. They have embedded processes that have been there for years, and they have lost their sense of jagad. Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Ananth sir, just wanted to know, you talked about limitations of skill set. Were you referring to any specific skill set, as in managerial skill set, or skill set in terms of doctors, or could you elaborate more on exactly where is the limitation in skill set?
Yeah, so the skill set that I am talking about is more from a management perspective, management skill set. I believe that although there is a dearth of doctors and nurses, but it can be solved, it can be addressed if you have smarter people thinking about it, right? Now what's happening today, at least in healthcare, is that it is a very doctor dependent, the entire ecosystem is developed around the doctor. If a doctor is good, it's like, in early days in Bollywood, if you just get a good film star, the movie would be successful. Not anymore, right? You need the entire team to work, but if you look at the hospitals, still the same thing is happening. The entire system, when somebody is planning to set up a hospital, they think of, let me try to get 2 or 3 very good doctors, and the doctors would attract the patients and this thing. But organizations like LifeSpring cannot operate in that model. It needs to operate on processes, it needs to operate on efficiency, right? And that's where you need people from a different field. Today if you ask me, our hospitals have done more than 20,000 deliveries, but I still cannot see blood, So I've never walked into a labor process or a delivery room. But there has to be people who can think about it, who can empathize, who can ask those very simple questions, right, today. And for that you need people, you need engineers, you need MBA, management graduates, right, who want to, do good and definitely do well. There has to be that balance. I believe that balance is very important to work out, so that you can think of a much longer perspective. It's not about trying to work for 2-3 years and and then go back to something else. So there has to be that balance of doing good and doing well. It's good to think from a social entrepreneurship perspective, BOP perspective, impact investment perspective. But at the end of the day, when I go back to my office tomorrow, it's about running a business, right? And running a business which is aligned to a mission, right? Which is set very early. So if we are very aligned to our mission of why we started the organization in the first place, and we are not moving away from that, I think we have done a good job of ourselves, whether people call you a social entrepreneur or not. So that's what I would say. We need more people to conclude from management, engineering, technology to come to enterprises like ours.
Can I add again, if you don't mind?
No, no,
I'm
please.
sorry. I'm sorry if I'm adding again. No, I mean, just to add on to what Ananth said, just to give two more examples which just struck me while you were saying. Two examples from completely unrelated areas. One on what is meant by innovation as you keep doing things. Everybody knows solar panels are very costly today. And one reason why we don't see too many takers for that is because the cost is so high and all that. So there are people who are doing very innovative ways of across it. I mean, why don't you, if you put a solar panel, you save power. So then they have devised a system of charging the client on the amount of power you save, vis-a-vis how much you would otherwise have spent on that. So the guy owns your asset over a period of time, essentially paying what you save every month as compared to. See, essentially you're doing the same thing. You're either giving an asset and your asset financing at X% interest is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is saying, I'm giving you an asset, you pay me rupees X, which is say Y% of your monthly electricity bill, and you own the asset over a period of time. You flip it around and exactly you do the same thing at the end of the day. That's one example. The other example which I can just think about is, I mean, all of us know about microfinance, for example, and everybody in microfinance has always been thinking of the Grameen model. And you go every week, you have a weekly meeting, etc. And there have been people and companies where we have been associated, they said, why should we look at it like that? And they have slightly changed it around and they've made their organization to be the most efficient organization and yet the most transparent organization. And they are today reasonably doing well as well. Because they said we'll just have 2 people. We'll not have a branch with 8 people. We'll just have 2 people. One will be a relationship person and one will be a group formation person. And not have 7 people doing both at the same time. It's a completely different perspective of looking at things. And I think, which probably the others hadn't thought about it till that time. I think this is an innovation and implementation.
One question. This for Mr. White. You mentioned that you saw potential in Indian market and so you entered the Indian market. This is very heartening to hear because about 15 years ago, a cousin of mine went to US because there was potential in those markets. But your story, I mean, I think there would be more to it than this. Either, I mean, your connection with India, was it entirely because of these reasons or there was more to the story? Am I able to convey what I'm...
Other than
there is a lot of value addition of fruits in India is very limited in comparison to what is happening in the US market.
Yeah.
And on that basis, we have an understanding that we see a lot of scope in markets in India.
Yeah.
Would that be the complete reasoning for you to, venture into an entirely new country where you have never been before and struggle for last 5 years to build a solution that will answer this market situation? Or
yeah, I think inherently as human beings, we want to contribute to society, whether that's through business or social good or just make a difference. And it's harder to do that in a country where you have everything. And here there is just so many opportunities to make a difference, and that's why we're here. Is that the right answer? Can I make a oh, go ahead.
How your product will help me in establishing cold chain between like producer to consumer? And are you looking at whole supply chain from farmer, from trader to wholesaler and consumer? So like what are the kind of opportunity you will tap in from produce for the whole value chain?
So the IRMA students that we hired did a whole complete cold chain study for us to see how we can adapt this thermal battery for fruits and vegetables. And we got a grant from the Indo-US Science and Technology Foundation to apply, basically put our battery on a 20-foot container at the farm level and chill that with a solar docking station. So then when that truck moves into the cities, they don't need a reefer truck and they don't need a diesel generator. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Professor Shalin, yes.
Hello. Yeah, of course, not a question, but an observation. Because issue that is being discussed is about the challenge or constraint of social enterprises to scale up. Okay, of course, in the morning, of course, one of the challenge that was identified was the competition from the mainstream industry. And of course, in the afternoon, a major issue that has come up is with regard to the capital, okay? The capital, the funding of these kinds of enterprises. Yeah, and of course, we have some very useful or innovative initiatives like that of Aavishkaar, because doing a very useful kind of a contribution in their own way. But because I see a major contradiction, okay, in the whole paradigm of this enterprises and looking towards initiatives like Aavishkaar. Of course, it's not in any way belittling whatever you have done, but we all know that whether it is milk, whether it is health, whether it is education, any such kinds of challenges, okay, in a country like us, okay, it's of a huge order, and definitely we need, and given that we are moving more and more towards market-based kinds of interventions and state for various reasons, though it's, of course, it's active in the social field, but still wants to leave the field for the market. So the need for, therefore, supporting these kinds of interventions has become a challenge. Okay? So what I specifically want to say, particularly taking this example of capital constraint, see, where is the fund? Where is the capital for investment? All our mainstream banks, if you put together, they have more than, I would say, more than 3/4 of our GDP as deposits with them. What are they doing towards this kind of priority areas? Of course, we had priority sector lending. One can even put social enterprises, many of them under priority sector kind of a lending. So under the existing policy framework, we are liberalizing those kinds of framework that we had earlier put in place, right? And we have even dismantling mechanisms like deposit insurance and credit guarantee kinds of mechanisms which were specifically meant to help the banks to become innovative, take risk to reach out to those things. We have dismantled or dismantling, in the process of dismantling those things. So therefore this mainstream capital that is there is just not there for these kinds of entrepreneurs. Bankers are investing in NABARD, they spend money from priority sector in RIDF, which is also not being properly utilized. Okay? So therefore, this whole mainstream fund for these kinds of entrepreneurs or unorganized sector which need attention is just not there, and therefore all the kinds of examples that have come.
Yeah,
so therefore, unless we think on those lines where mainstream institutions become more innovative, take up these kinds of, take up initiatives to finance them, we will be struggling, and the social entrepreneurs will be struggling forever on these lines only.
But reality on the ground is if you focus on the customer, the money will come. That's it.
Just to, I mean, maybe I think Professor was also hinting. Just to add, Professor, I think I would share the broader sentiment that you had said about the fact that where are all these investors investing, and I think that is precisely the kind of a gap that we believe we are trying to address. And because all the mainstream investment funds, the minimum, if you ask them what is your ticket size of your investment, nobody would probably say less than 1 million or 2 million US dollar. And when you start from that perspective, then you already are envisioning already a company of already that has reached some size, and not anywhere looking at something that is much smaller than that. So I fully agree with that kind of a sentiment, and I think that is one of the reasons why at least the way we thought about that we should make that change and really step in. And like I said, our investments have been as small as 8 lakhs, and that too we have tranched it and given 3 lakhs first and a little bit more Indian rupees. So we have given as small as that as well. But I think, sir, I think this thing, it's changing now actually. I think going back to what Professor Agrawal was saying a little earlier is what things are changing. People are no longer finicky about this as long as they say, and going to what Sam just mentioned, I think it's increasingly realized today that enterprises need to be done at much smaller, and they need to be partnered and stayed on with the course as these enterprises grow themselves. And I think that realization is dawning increasingly. And I think today you would be actually seeing there are more mainstream funds who are ready to go back and start small as compared to where they were 2 or 3 years back, because they see that if you don't do that, you will find it too late to even catch up with them. 3 years, 4 years down the line, they will be somewhere right there and you will not even be able to catch up with them. So I think they are realizing that as well. I think that's a good thing that's happening. But I agree that so far it's been a gap that has been existing, but increasingly we believe it's getting bridged.
We saw Professor Shailendra raising a very important question about funding. That has been the concern of our panelists here as well, coming from different sectors. Part of the answer was given by Sam, saying that if you address the customer, money will come. That's right? Yeah. And now, shall we handle part of this? Shall we let this question partly be handled by Sandeep ji? And he pointed out the banks not being able to give funds for these kind of activities. So would you like to add something?
You will have to wait for me to think of an answer first. Actually, it's not that. I think the only problem with banks is that there's been a lot of pressure on them as large institutions on performance. And I think what banks really need to do is bring in separate credit lines, which a lot of banks do, and private banks therefore score. So if we can actually get some of our scheduled commercial banks to look at innovative funds separately as a line of credit, I think that makes a difference. Problem that's happened with scheduled commercial banks is that such huge amounts of them go into priority sector lending. And I must tell you, priority sector lending is also fairly effective. It's just that it's not for innovations, but huge amounts of funds are going into priority sector lending. And therefore, what banks feel is that their objectives in terms of credit funding on priority areas is already being met off. In fact, in the last 7 to 8 years, agriculture, crop loans, as well as rural non-farm lending has actually gone up by almost 5 to 7 times. I think it was something in the field of about 1,500 crores. It's now nearly about 4,70,000 or 5 lakh crore per annum. So in that sense, they feel satisfied. But if we can, as a group, look at scheduled commercial banks to look at innovative funding in a separate line. The problem is somebody will have to, from absolutely policy level, give them their benchmarks for interest rates. If you can do that, the problem is we don't know what are the interest rates you actually work on in terms of innovative projects. Government's approach is that if something is desirable, you should have as low interest rates as possible. The moment you start looking at low interest rates, government scheduled commercial banks will lose interest by looking at them as fundable or bankable projects, and will look at them as something that they need to do as part of their duty. But if there are people who can advise and say that what are the interest rates at which most of these innovative projects can go at, maybe sectorally, because I'm quite sure there is no general interest rate that you can talk about, then perhaps scheduled commercial banks can look at. As far as private banks are concerned, I'm not sure. I don't know. My personal experience has not been very good with whether they are actually funding or banking in areas where we need this kind of funding.
Thank you.
Also, I think.
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to say, just to add to what has been said, is that I think when we're looking at impact capital by definition, I think has to be patient capital. And I think which will really mean that the companies are already very early stage and they are already stressed on their cash flows. They're already stressed on their top line, bottom line. So what promoters and what these early stage impact enterprises are looking are the kind of capital that can stay the while for some time before they get stressed and having to pay this, and whether the banking sector can look at it from that perspective, like what Sandeep had said is about as a different way of looking at these things, could possibly be a great way of looking at it. But I also think that the banking sector has been trained to look things as from a risk-averse perspective, whereas impact investment and patient capital has to always be risk-friendly perspective. I think the approach itself, I would think, will have to be different. I think the promoters would be the best people to say that. So, yeah.
I'll just add one point here. You're absolutely right. I mean, when we were looking for funds for Rangsutra, all kinds of banks, private, the others, said, where's your 3 years balance sheet? We didn't have a balance sheet. So they're risk averse, and whereas an impact investor or an investor would be risk taking. But my question here is, I'd like us all to think about it, is even it's not, okay, we can say it's investment. At the end of the day, there has to be profit. You have to create more value. But how do you calculate that value? Are we still going to just limit ourselves to monetary calculations when we talk about impact investment?
I agree.
Or if we are a different kind of enterprise and we're calling ourselves social enterprises and not just pure enterprises. I'm not just talking about enterprises which are in there to create value, to make money, to make a good return, get a good return and exit. Because that's power to that has its place. But if you're looking at investment which also yields other returns apart from the profit generated and employment created, we'll have to work out ways for calculating that, for assessing that. At the moment, there is nothing.
Absolutely.
And so when people want to value a company, they're looking at, you can have anyone trying to put in their formula for it, and which one do you agree to, and how it all depends. So that's very subjective, and that's something I think while these enterprises are still young in a way, to look at other ways.
It's an art more than a science, I agree.
It's an art more than a science.
Sandeep, I just wanted to add, the reason why I said about separate lines of credit is that if we really want these projects to, don't want to be offensive to anybody, but if you want your projects to go beyond being case studies on people's annual reports, and which is what the most innovative products become, because, sorry for using the word, but you are sexy case studies, which occasionally get exhibited. You have to have people primarily responsible for funding enterprises like you, and that is why separate credit lines are required. Sure. If you give people primary responsibility to be responsible towards people like you, you build a business in a bank, and you make that business people's primary responsibilities.
Sure.
I think question is right now posed in a fashion that it has become more structural, kind of institutional mechanism, which can address specific needs and concerns of a social enterprise as against the commercial enterprise, which can be looked at purely from a risk-return perspective. So here, if somebody needs to do that, I think we heard from Mr. Mohan saying some things in the morning. He's some of the panelists who are now new. I would let Mr. Mohan make a comment on that. For social enterprises.
Essentially, I think here is, the bank is into debt funds. We are basically looking at equity. And that is where the issue comes with banks. And what I was trying to tell you is, if public sector, the public organizations have to get into this, then we will have to make a clear distinction between, you'll have to segment the social enterprise. Whether it's a programmatic social enterprise, whether it is going to be largely beneficial to people, and whether or it is a valuation-based venture which is going to be attended to by angels, that is a friction. And therefore, if I believe that there is a requirement for segmenting the social enterprise. I'm not sure whether that's actually the word we should be using, The phrase should be social enterprise or whatever. So in the absence of a policy space, it will be difficult for public institutions to fund it. If you want to have a policy space, then we need to segment it very clearly, and there has to be a people orientation, very well defined, right, as a statement of intent. That's what I was trying to tell in the morning. The statement of intent has to be very clear, it has to be people oriented, and that should be, and the balance sheet cannot be the enterprise balance sheet there. That's my response to this. Thank you.
Sure. Are there any further questions from the audience?
Can I make a shameless plug for recruiting?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So now that we're ready to scale up, we are looking to hire a chief operating officer and a head of marketing and business development. So you're hired. So if you know anyone looking to shift to Mumbai, let me know.
See, we have 100% recruitment in 5 minutes of a job being floated. Right. So if there are no further questions, then yeah.
I could just rephrase to Mr. White what I was trying to ask earlier. Like the discussion is on future of social enterprises. So, like, is Promethean Power an indicator of what the future of social enterprises are going to be? Can we expect more people coming in from universities from abroad, or
Absolutely.
people such as yourself, taking their path to another country and struggling to the point where you have to smoke a cigarette? And finally setting up such institutions. So is that the future of social enterprises? Can we expect more?
Yeah, there's a big focus at Stanford University and at MIT, focused on bottom of the pyramid technologies, and it's becoming the biggest growth area for these universities. Yes. Yeah, I think, every month we send out videos from the villages that we're working from, and we make it sound much more glamorous than it is. So I hope we're doing our part to kind of encourage that.
I will just the reason I again decided to ask this question is when we look up to going abroad, we are looking at a higher standard of living. When somebody is coming here and getting into this system here, what is really motivating people? And that is why the question, was it really the markets that drove you here, or is it something else?
Purely market, seriously.
Could be Taj Mahal as well.
Sunlight.
Right.
The sunlight.
Huh?
The sunlight.
Yeah, the sun. Yeah. And the warmth of the people.
Thank you.
Sam, how did you come up with this name Promethean Power? I know there was a Mr. Prometheus somewhere in Greece, and but I don't know what he did. And are you going to limit yourself to only power, or you're going to go into other areas, other sectors? So how did you come up with Promethean Power?
Yeah, we basically stole it from a friend who had a company called Prometheus Institute, and Prometheus was a titan in Greek mythology who stole fire from the gods and gave it to the mortals, and he got in big trouble for that. And we've been in big trouble for 5 years trying to develop this thing, so we definitely resonate with that name. But now we're partnering with a company in Navi Mumbai who's one of India's largest ice equipment manufacturers, and that joint venture is going to be called Promethean Spenta. And they're going to help us scale from where we are.
Thank you. In this session, we have been looking at problems of the social enterprises at various stages of their life cycle. We had Ms. Ghosh describing to us the organizational challenges, the marketing challenges, the funding challenges, and so on. Then we had Mr. Ananth Kumar telling us about skill shortages, Mr. Pradeep Kumar telling us about skill shortages, Mr. Sam telling us about finding the right niche in the market space. And then we had Ms. Kinnari Desai describing to us the typical funding challenges that a pure social enterprises faces in this current paradigm shift that is going on, that there are question marks even from foreign funders about, and prejudices from foreign funders about social enterprises purely. And then we had another view from the other side of the capital divide, and that is from Mr. Pradeep for social, there's funding for social enterprises. We've seen that there is some interest. Social enterprises do fall in the cracks of what are the various silos that are there for funding various kind of enterprises, and social enterprises fall through them. So therefore, there is no single isolated silo which can look at their problems and challenges and really go through that and evolve a policy mechanism. We saw some suggestions in the morning, and then we saw our dear Mr. Sandeep ducking some of those bouncers. But still, yes, there is a market solution that was suggested by Sam, that if you got your product right, if you got your technology right, if you're looking right at the customer, then money will come. So there is that part of, the belief that this thing will set it right. There is that part that we need a policy support mechanism. With that, those two questions, I leave the audience to take a view on this, and then close this discussion with a big thanks for all the panelists who have found the time to be here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The session was mind-bending, forcing one to think and deliberate about the way ahead. Nothing could complete the perception of social enterprises as successfully as this session did. IRMA is honored to have such distinguished personalities on the stage who could encapsulate the objective of IRMA that IRMA is looking forward to achieve. Now, we have a small little thank you note for Asha Foundation for going out of the way and taking care of an injured pigeon in the campus. To brief a little about the organization, it works for street animals and birds, providing free treatment for the city of Ahemedabad. A noble job indeed. Now I request Professor Girish Agrawal to give away the token of appreciation to the panelists. Ms. Sumita Ghose, could we have a round of applause, please? Mr. Ananth Kumar. Mr. Sam White. Ms. Kinnari Desai. Mr. P. Pradeep. Thank you, sir. Could I now call on Krishna Swarup Konidena, a member of IRMA Social Entrepreneurship Cell, to come over and deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Deepa. On behalf of the IRMA Social Entrepreneurship Cell, a student-driven initiative, I take this opportunity to thank all the panelists, the delegates, the organizations, and their representatives who have made it to the fair, our director, Jimol ma'am, Professor Girish Agrawal, Professor Pratik Modi, the IRMA community in general, and batches PRM 32 and 33 in particular. And most importantly, the crew that has put in remarkable efforts behind the scenes. We are very enthused by the kind of support we have received for this event. This can only bode well for organizing more such rewarding interactions in the future and help us in our endeavor to promote and strengthen social entrepreneurship at IRMA. I hand over the mic to Deepa to formally bring this session to a close. Thank you.
Thank you, Swaroop. You're all cordially invited for the high tea, followed by the cultural event, which begins by 6 or 6:30. With this, we come to an end of this prestigious event. We bid adieu with a thought on mind and commitment in our hearts. Of all the things that we seek in abundance, knowledge is the most enriching. Of all the journeys that we undertake, the one that lights up 100 faces is the most fulfilling. We, at IRMA, through such knowledge and more such journeys, will do our best to keep the spirit of cooperatives alive and thriving. Thank you.